why don't you just go out on the stage or something?
Right. I'll frame up on here. Stream test 1, 1, 2, 1, 2. Hey, hey, hey. 1, 2, 1, 2. Stream test. Stream test. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Check. 1, 2, 1, 2. Give me the thumbs up when you see us live. And in 3, 2, 1. Check. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Hey, hey, hey. 1, 2, 1, 2. Good?
Good evening, everyone. How are you all? That's right. There you go. Now I believe you. We're coming to you live from Thurgood Marshall Academy. I am Brittany Packnett. I'm an activist, an educator, and a writer. I was a Ferguson protester. I co-founded an organization against police violence called Campaign Zero. And you can hear me every week on a little program called Pod Save the People. I'm so excited to be with you all tonight, especially on this day. Because the best way to honor the legacy of the fallen is not just to talk about it, but to be about it. It's to show up and pick up the mantle of that legacy of justice that Bobby Kennedy left us, and continue to do that work. And I'm especially excited to have this conversation with you all tonight because we are following the vision and the tenacity and the boldness and the relentlessness of each of you, our young leaders. Whether you're leading in the classroom or in the streets or somewhere in between, you are who give us courage, you give us inspiration, because every single day you stand up in the face of hate and you choose love, you choose belief in the future, you choose justice even when people say it can't be done. And for your passion, for your futuristic point of view, for your relentlessness and willingness to be here and to stand up always, we say thank you, and we are ready to follow your lead. And so when I think about the legacy of Bobby Kennedy and the work that he left for us to do, we have to be clear that he was focused greatly on young people. And to quote him, he said, "The youth of this nation are the clearest mirror of our performance." With these words, we begin our town hall to learn from one another. If you're watching via live stream on the Now This Politics Facebook page, follow the conversation on social media with the hashtag RFK50, and join the conversation by tweeting your questions for our organizations using the same hashtag RFK50. To get us started, here's a look at Bobby Kennedy's vision.
I asked my wife as I was coming down whether she could think of a joke. She said, if they look at the top of your head, they'll laugh.
This is a day of affirmation, a celebration of liberty. We stand here in the name of freedom. At the heart of that Western freedom and democracy is the belief that the individual man, the child of God, is the touchstone of value, and all society, all groups and states exist for that person's benefit. Everything that makes man's life worthwhile, family, work, education, a place to rear one's children, and a place to rest one's head, all can be swept away by a government which does not heed the demands of its people, not just to the wealthy, not just to those of a particular religion, not just to those of a particular race, but to all of the people.
Hey guys. Hi, I'm Carrie Kennedy, and I am president of Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights, and we're here in Washington today for a town hall meeting. This is to really talk about youth and the power of youth in creating change in our country and around the world. Of course, my father, Robert F. Kennedy, believed in youth and the power of youth, and he spent his entire time, his entire life as a leader, meeting with women and men around the world, students across our globe and in the United States, listening to their visions for the future and encouraging them and working with them. So I really can't think of a better way of celebrating his life than with the students who are here today. Students who are working on stopping gun violence, students who are working with the Native American movement on Standing Rock, students who are working with Color of Change to focus attention on bail reform, on mass incarceration, and more. So I'm so happy to be with all of you. I really am looking forward to the discussion today. And I just want to say, when people ask me, what's the most important thing to remember about Robert Kennedy, I really think it's his moral imagination, his capacity to put himself in the other person's shoes. And that's what saved us from nuclear annihilation during the Cuban Missile Crisis, because he understood that Khrushchev actually didn't want war, but he was being pushed to it by his military-industrial complex. And it's what allowed him to speak so eloquently when Martin Luther King died, and to stop the riots that were going to happen in Indianapolis, and which broke out 125 cities across our country at that time. So today, you guys are the leaders. I'm so happy to be with you. Can't wait to hear the discussion, and I'll pass it along. Brittany.
Thank you so much. Can we give her a round of applause? Thank you for the incredible work you're carrying on. And with that thoughtful introduction, we now begin the conversation with activists from the incredible organization United We Dream, which is the largest immigrant youth-led network in the country. Please welcome Cristina Jimenez, Claudia Quiñones, and Carla Aguirre. Let's give them a round of applause. So awesome to have you all with us. So as I said, there literally is not an organization that is youth-led, immigrant youth-led, as big as United We Dream. And there are a lot of young people who are really passionate about the work that you're doing, passionate about changing their communities. But here's my question: what direction do you give to them as you have audience with them today?
Hello, everyone. My name is Claudia Quiñones. I'm undocumented, unafraid, and here to stay.
Amen. All right.
So the first time that I ever did anything related to activism, I was in high school. I was 17 years old at that time. I was undocumented, did not know what to do with my life, and wanted to get a higher education. And most importantly, I wanted to be proud of who I was, right? And I know that many times this is what happens with youth. They want to do something, and they don't know what to do, right? So if you live here in DC, we have a really awesome summer program for high school and college leaders that want to make their communities a better place. We are going to teach you the necessary organizing tools to change your community and to empower your community. So you are more than welcome to be part of it. Go to our website, unitedwedream.org, and click Summer of Dreams.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carla Aguirre. I am also undocumented, unafraid, and here to stay. My journey started recently in September of 2017. I am from the South. I am from South Carolina, from this town called Charleston. I'm sure a lot of y'all have heard of it. And being undocumented in South Carolina, specifically Charleston, is hard. And I remember the first time that I joined the movement, a lot of people were like, how is it being undocumented in the South? And it's hard. You stand out just by the language that you speak. And I feel like I needed to do something for my community and my family. And I was able to join United We Dream throughout their Dream Act campaign in September. And I know that there are a lot of people currently watching us on live through home. So if you want to get involved, if you want to know how you can start in your own localities or find a group close to you, I know that we all have cell phones and we have Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. So I would say follow United We Dream's page, but also text Here to Stay at 877-877, and you will get notifications of what's going on, news, and what we'll be doing, how to join the movement.
Awesome. Christina?
I think my team covered it all. I think that this question about direction, I think for me, Brittany, and you and I have been part of movements and doing work with young people of color. I think it's really about creating the space where the brilliance of our communities could shine. And at United We Dream, I know when I was 19 and I was undocumented and very afraid and very ashamed, and I wouldn't talk to anyone about it, United We Dream gave me this space to not only share my story and feel safe for the first time, but also to feel loved, and to get the tools to then think about, okay, if I'm living in fear of deportation all the time, and this is unfair, and there's a deep injustice, like what can we do together? And at spaces like United We Dream, I think is more about gaining that clarity and that direction together to address the injustices and the issues that we want to change in our lives, and knowing that we have that inner power and that inner answer within ourselves to do that.
And when you talk about us being a part of movements, so often movements operate in silos. People will say, well, immigration is important, but that's not my issue, or gun violence is important, but that's not my issue. What do you say to those folks who need to understand what Aboriginal activist Lilla Watson taught us, that our fates are actually bound up with one another's?
So for me, is we're all fighting for freedom. We're all fighting for rights. We're all fighting to show equality, that we're all human beings. We all breathe. This is our home. This is our planet. So for me, it would be to do this for our ancestors were fighting before we were fighting. So what a better way to do it than to unite as one and fight together for all of our reasons, to fight as a family, and to show that we choose love over hate. So for me, that's important. It's not about how it affects you, but how we can all fight together.
I could not agree more. And as we're building that family, what's the best way that we can celebrate one another? June is, of course, Immigrant Heritage Month. And how do we not only celebrate one another, but actually advocate for policies that will protect our communities?
Well, I think for us, every day it's like Immigrant Day, and every month.
I love it.
Because there's so much hate out there, and when you are part of a community where you have to confront and sort of hear all these words like animal, alien, criminal, illegal, like this is what our communities hear and have to confront every day. So I think that it is, even more important now to make sure that we're celebrating our stories, and to know our stories and where we come from, and to celebrate our, ancestors, as Carla was saying, but also to celebrate our dreams. It being in this high school setting reminds me of one of the young people that we work with in Houston, who was criminalized by his school when he reported bullying in Houston, Texas, and that report of bullying led him to be put in a detention jail for 3 months, and he was in the process of being deported. And he was community organizing that saved Dennis from deportation. But he was a junior in high school. He is a junior in high school, and while all his friends are preparing for college, he was in jail for the only reason of being undocumented, brown, and in schools that are over-policed, right? And so, when I think about the question about celebrating and how do we support each other, it's about making the life of Dennis was supported, one where he feels loved. And actually, Dennis, just last week, I believe, joined our membership meeting again. And he was taking pictures and talking to all of our community that worked together to get him out and save him from deportation. So, that's a little bit of a story to celebrate that.
Did you have something to add, Claudia?
So what I was thinking about is that the same people that are deporting, detaining, and separating immigrant families are the same people that are criminalizing Black people, and the same people that tell women they have no rights, right? So I think that what's happening here right now, it's beautiful. We're coming together as a community, and we are showing the power of the people, right? The power of the people is the most important force that there is out there, because it changes policies and it changes hearts, and it makes the community a better place.
Absolutely. And speaking of the power of the people, you've got an audience, not just here in this room, but online, who are ready to take their power and do something with it. So what is your ask of them?
So my ask is if I can have all my brothers and sisters who are here to stand up with us. And I have one question for y'all. Are y'all ready to fight for freedom? Yes. Are y'all ready to fight for freedom? Yes. So repeat after me. It is our duty to fight for our freedom.
It is our duty to fight for our freedom.
It is our duty to win.
It is our duty to win.
We must love and protect one another.
We must love and protect one another.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
One more time. It is our duty to fight for our freedom.
It is our duty to fight for our freedom.
It is our duty to win.
It is our duty to win.
We must love and protect one another.
We must love and protect one another.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
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 Thank you.
Awesome. Let's thank the ladies from United We Dream, not just for being here, but for all of the incredible work that you and thousands of others are doing across this country every single day with no fear, with so much courage and bravery, because we have nothing to lose but our chains. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I'm so inspired by that, because that was actually
the bravery in battle or great intelligence. It is the one essential, vital quality for those who seek to change the world, which yields most painfully to change. Each time a man stands up for an ideal, or acts to improve the lot of others, or strikes out against injustice, he sends forth a tiny ripple of hope, and crossing each other from 1,000,000 different centers of energy and daring, those ripples build a current which can sweep down the mightiest walls of oppression and resistance. Few will have the greatness to bend history, but each of us can work to change a small portion of the event, and in the total, all of these acts will be written in the history of this generation.
So how y'all feeling? You feeling fired up and ready to go? That's what I'm talking about. Thanks again to the folks from United We Dream for inspiring us. And now I'd like to welcome some incredible student leaders for March for Our Lives. Now, it's a long list, so applaud at the end, kind of like you're supposed to do at graduation. We've got Emma Gonzalez, Cameron Caskey, Jacqueline Corin, Alex Wynn, David Hogg, Zion Kelly, Chris Grady, and Jamal Lemmy. Thank you so much for being here. So you all are history makers. Like, March for Our Lives was one of the largest demonstrations in American history. How can you teach all of us to go from a single moment that could have been tragic, right, and actually take your power back and go from just being a moment to really creating a movement?
Well, you know, we are starting over the summer. We have this project that we're doing. We're doing a road trip all around the country. We have every stop we're hitting all 27 stops of the 27 congressional districts in Florida, and over 50 stops in over 20 states in the United States, and a group going to DC to talk to anybody in government. And that is how we're going to be taking this moment to a movement. We're going to actually be, well, this wasn't just a march.
Yeah.
From the get-go, this wasn't just a march. This was how do we change the laws? And this is one of the ways that we can both get people registered to vote, talk to lawmakers, and actually talk to people on an everyday level, just talking to people who've experienced gun violence and sharing our stories and everybody getting listened to and using our platform to raise their voices.
Yeah, and I mean, speaking of voting, there are primaries happening in several states today, right? As you go and you prepare for those conversations, I'd love for one of you to tell me what exactly you plan to say to the people. Even if someone's tuning in right now and they're in line ready to vote, what do you want to say to them about how they can use their vote to continue this movement?
Well, I think the main message to give to people this summer is marching is a very important thing to do. Protest is patriotic. Looking at the country and saying we can do better is very important. But the best way to implement real change is at the polls. We need to make voting less like a chore and more like an expression of your patriotism. We need to create a much more positive and energized spirit around voting and putting moral officials in office. And this summer, our main goal is to go to everybody and say, our political system is flawed, but if you want to complain about it, you need to do your part and vote. And so many people have asked us, I'm not old enough to vote yet, I can't vote, how can I get involved? Well, even if you can't vote, I can't vote in the upcoming midterms. You can get involved in registering people in your area to vote, encouraging them to vote, calling everyone you know and saying, are you gonna be at the polls this year? There are so many different ways to get involved, and while it's important to march and protest, at the end of the day, real change comes along by voting.
Absolutely. We have to use every single tool in our toolbox to affect change, right? Such an important point. But you said one thing that's really important. Protest is patriotic. And here's one of the things that I love about you all and all of the folks gathered here. You all have been really diligent and intentional in reminding America that we treat certain kinds of protesters very differently. That when folks are protesting and they're black or brown, they get treated differently than white young people do. And that when gun violence hits communities like Washington, D.C. or Chicago, we don't pay nearly as much attention. And I appreciate how intentional you all have been about that conversation. So can you talk to me about some of the ways, I'd love to hear from two of you, about how you are working to make sure that this movement is intersectional now and intersectional forever?
You know, what happened at our school, it isn't unique. It's not a one-of-a-kind scenario. Mass shootings have been happening for years now, and no one's been doing anything about it. Gun violence has been happening for years, and no one's doing anything about it. The difference is that we had a platform. We were able to speak our voice. When people get shot every day in communities every day that don't have the voice to speak up, these murders, this senseless gun violence, it isn't solved. It isn't always clear cut where you can find the murderer. It's just every day there is gun violence. Everyday shootings are an everyday problem. That's what Trayvon Bosley said at the March for Our Lives. And we need to show that this is an everyday problem. It's not just 17 people died at our school. It's people die every day in this country, and people need to realize it. People need to open their eyes and see that this is an issue.
How do we take that on every day?
For me, one of the most eye-opening things that I've seen throughout this experience was the protests in Miami-Dade County in Liberty City following the tragic shooting of 4 kids in their city at Northwestern High School. They started leading this protest where the kids were walking out, but the protest, I was expecting it to be kind of covered the same as our walkout with reporters on the ground and them speaking to the kids. I only saw one actual reporter on the ground there speaking to the kids, and all the other news coverage, even though they were just as peaceful as we were, they were covering it like it was a riot. And I think a major part of that is because they're students of color and because it's a school of lower socioeconomic status than we are. And I think it's important that what I hate is it's like now that a bunch of rich white kids have been shot, everybody's starting to care. We should have been caring about this a long time ago, but now I feel that we have to use all of our platforms to work together to solve these issues, not as Democrats, not as Republicans, not as Black, white, Latino, Native American, rich or poor communities, but as American communities, because we are all affected by this, and we will only fix this by working together to solve it.
Yeah, and that all of us deserve to live safely, right? Lots of snaps for that. Zion, you are from DC, right? And you go to school right here at Thurgood Marshall. You've been personally affected by this. How have you been taking your power back and contributing to this movement?
So my brother was shot and killed. And since my brother, he was a huge advocate, and he did a lot of this stuff before me. I just wanted to continue his legacy and just to do something really to make him proud and to create change so that no one else who lost a twin brother would have to go through the same pain as me. So my family, of course, has proposed new legislation, and we're trying to just create a united front around DC and around the entire country to include everyone's voices so we all our experiences can be heard, and just so we all can be heard because we all matter.
That's right. Absolutely. And you know, if I think about the legacy of Bobby Kennedy, he came about in a time where advocacy activism was really at a high. And I think that we're experiencing another moment just like that. So what can we learn from the past about how we can actually affect change positively?
I mean, it's without question that the most successful movements are led by young people, from the civil rights movement, freedom riders, the protesters of the Vietnam War, and it's not even in this country, it's around the world. The protesters in Tiananmen Square and to the protesters in South Africa to end the apartheid and the Velvet Revolution, all of those have one thing in common, that they were led by young people. And young people have such a type of spirit and drive that can lead this, and that's exactly the spirit that Bobby Kennedy embodies.
Yeah. And I want to hear from some of you all that I haven't heard from yet. There are folks my age, I'm not that old, but maybe a little bit older than me, who are afraid to be led by young people, who think that you all don't know enough yet, you're not big enough yet, you haven't had enough life experience. What do you have to say to those doubters?
Well, for me, one thing that I say to a lot of people when they say, "Are you old enough to talk about gun legislation?" And I say to them, if I'm, along with my other classmates, old enough to be shot in our school, I'm old enough to talk about gun violence.
Absolutely.
No.
Drop the mic, girl. You had it.
Nah, but that's definitely true. A lot of older folk definitely have a problem with being led by young people because, you know, there is this stigma that, you know, we don't know anything. And just to backpedal off the question before, I think people are just really fed up with the state of our world, because David and I, one day we were talking, like, why isn't caring cool? Why are people so I would say, so distraught about the state of affairs in our reality? And it was because people saw what the carnage of Vietnam every day on their televisions. People saw their brothers and sisters being affected by gun violence and police brutality. And what I think in today's time is if we can bring that to people's front doorsteps and to show them that this is our reality and we have to band together and we have to stand as a unified front, then we can find change, because people care. But I can see in today's time that times are changing and people are caring more. And one thing that blew my mind, because I was at the RFK Awards today and I saw every other year it was one or two people accepting the world award. Today there was 4 organizations fighting for, you know, what they believe in. And I just think that we are at the cusp of change.
Yeah, because you all are making the change happen. So as we close out, you're right. A lot of people are worried, they're scared, they're living in fear because of all of the things happening, it seems all at the same time, right? It seems like you cannot turn on the TV, open up Twitter, open up a newspaper without seeing your community being impacted in some kind of way. So each of you give me 1 or 2 words to help people get their hope back, to help people believe that change is possible and that the future that we want to exist can actually be true. Love to start with you, Emma.
I'm going to start with my closing quote from my speech at the march.
I
Fight
love
for
it.
your lives before it's somebody else's job.
Amen.
I was just gonna say love.
I would say compassion and understanding.
That's important enough for both mics. That's good.
Thank you.
I was just gonna say love and unification, definitely.
Be optimistic and hope for the best.
Okay, everyone took my answer, so I'm just gonna go with compassion again.
Speak with those that you disagree with. You have a lot more in common than you think you don't.
Love wins.
Indeed.
Open yourself up to hate and say, you know, accept the hate and say, it's okay. We have disagreements, but at the end of the day, we're still humans and I'm going to talk to you as a human.
You know what that is? That's fighting hate with love. And that's the perfect way to end it. Let's thank all of the young people for March for Our Lives, not just those of you who are present, but all of the folks you represent who are still doing this work every single day. If you are tuning in on Now This Politics Facebook page or you're following along on Twitter, you can tweet your questions to United We Dream or March for Our Lives using the hashtag RFK50. Thanks so much, you all. Let's give another round of applause.
What we need in the United States is not division. What we need in the United States is not hatred. What we need in the United States is not violence and lawlessness, but is love and wisdom and compassion toward one another, feeling of justice toward those who still suffer within our country, whether they be white or whether they be black. We can do well in this country. We will have difficult times. We've had difficult times in the past, but we will have difficult times in the future. It is not the end of violence. It is not the end of lawlessness, and it's not the end of disorder. But the vast majority of white people and the vast majority of black people in this country want to live together, want to improve the quality of our life, and want justice for all human beings that abide in our land. And what dedicate ourselves to what the Greeks wrote so many years ago, to tame the savageness of man and make gentle the life of this world. Let us dedicate ourselves to that and say a prayer for our country and for our people. Thank you very much.
Welcome back, and thank you so much for this incredible conversation, and to all of you who have been contributing to the conversation online. Before we get started with this next conversation, I have to shout out 3 incredible young women who are my heroes and should be yours: India, Bria, and Michaela. They are second place winners of a NASA competition and students from right here in DC. Yes, go ahead, queens. And like everybody's hair is on fleek, yes. And so now I have the distinct pleasure of having a conversation with Clarice McCants from the largest online racial justice platform, Color of Change. Can we welcome Clarice?
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely, thank you for being here. And thank you for all of the just stalwart work that Color of Change has been doing for so long. And Color of Change has actually been fighting to correct injustices in many industries for over a decade now. Where have we seen the most progress, and where do we need to put our energy now?
Yeah, so Color of Change actually, when it started 10 years ago, it was right after Hurricane Katrina. And it was at a time that people were coming to grips with the reality that this country and the people who run it, and a lot of people here, just don't care about disappointing black people. You saw people on their roofs shouting for help. You saw families in despair, right? And people just begging for someone to help them, and we didn't see any leadership. And Kanye West got on TV. He said...
The old Kanye.
The old Kanye got on TV and said, George Bush doesn't care about black people.
I'm old enough to remember this. Mm-hmm.
And it was the truth, right? And the very next day, Color Changed sent its first email, and the subject line was, Kanye was right. Key term was, right? Like, we clear that as of today, we can't really say stuff like that. But it was a hard truth that a lot of people were coming to grips with, and Color Change started with the idea that it's not okay that, this country doesn't care about disappointing black people. And Color of Change's mission is to build black political power. And so since then, we've seen a lot of progress. It took 5 years to get Bill O'Reilly off the air. Color Change members fought for that for 5 years, and we won that, and it was amazing. The other day, it took just mere hours for Roseanne's show to get canceled after she tweeted some racist stuff, right? And so you see that, like, corporations, companies, they feel accountable to Black folks in some ways, right? And they understand that when Black people are disappointed, they should be concerned because there are consequences. And you're seeing that, like, across in corporations and, you know, folks who are building like industries upon Black pain, but then you also are seeing that with elected officials and in direct response to movements that are coming up and people taking their power back. After the uprisings in Ferguson and in Chicago and Baltimore and Charlotte, where people were identifying prosecutors as like people who have like a lot of power within the criminal justice system to transform it, but also to hold police accountable when they kill us in cold blood. And so then you start to see Black people organizing around electing prosecutors that actually stand for justice and saying, if you don't, then you need to get out of office, and kicked out Anita Alvarez, kicked out Tim McGinty in Cleveland, right? And so these are places where you're starting to see like a lot of momentum. And you're seeing Black people represented more in television and in office, in boardrooms, all these places. But as Rashad, our executive director, would say, you can't mistake that presence for power, for the actual power to be able to transform the circumstances that a lot of people are still suffering under, and these deeply entrenched systemic ills that exist within this country that are rooted in racism. Those things are very hard to change, and it requires us having a mass amount of political power, and that's why we are still fighting for that every single day.
And so what's next? There have been some hard-fought victories that cannot be undercounted, right? So, but as you build on those victories, what's next? What is Color of Change focused on right now?
Color of Change is focused on a lot, and I particularly am focused on ending mass incarceration. It is raging, and we are still locking Black people, people of color in cages and throwing away the key. And undergirding all of that is like just the philosophical undergirdings of the criminal justice system in and of itself are racist, right? They are the same reasons that people are being shot and killed in the streets, is that Black people are dangerous, that we're criminals, that we need to be punished and constrained. Yeah. And transforming that is going to take a lot, and it's about doing it on a very, like, a systemic level.
And one of the ways you all are doing that is actually taking on district attorneys' races, as you were talking about. How many of you all know who your district attorney is? Exactly. So this is why the work that you're doing is so important. That's not like a half a hand, a couple hands, right? But this is why this work is so important. So can you talk to us about how we can actually learn more about the criminal justice system in our own community and potentially participate in some of the work Color of Change is doing around that?
Yeah, absolutely. So like you just said, prosecutors are extremely important within the criminal justice system, and they are elected. And so if you go to colorofchange.org, you can find information about your prosecutor. You can find information about the prosecutor races that are coming up, and like some of them are today, where people are galvanizing around, like, how do we get someone in office who is going to stand up and say, like, I will not lock people up for low-level offenses. I will not lock people up for just, you know, living their lives. I will not send people to jail on really high bail.
That's right, it's a choice. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It is a choice.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for that information. You talked a little bit about the importance of social media, and lots of people think that hashtag activism, as we like to call it, is not real, right? And yet we see just how powerful it can be to amplify voices that have been unheard before, just how quickly social media can move to make things happen, like when you referenced Roseanne. How has Color of Change really leveraged social media, digital media, new media to make change happen, and what can we all learn from that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can learn from young people, right? Young people have been leading the way in terms of how to use these tools that were kind of created for friends to keep in touch with each other to actually create mass change. And so you can learn from the examples of the people that you just had up here on stage, right? And I think, you know, one of the things that I would really say about how to really use social media as a tool and as a platform is to just speak the truth. I think we often see a lot of things that are kind of like orchestrated and like rehearsed or, you know, pre-written, right? But the things that tend to get the most attention is people just like speaking their real, raw, authentic truth, and that's gonna win out every time. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that the connections that people can make to other activists in different corners of the world can only happen on social media in ways that it just can't always happen in real life. Like I'll never forget trying to figure out how to get tear gas out of our eyes and off of our clothes in Ferguson. And we learned how to do that from Palestinian activists on the other side of the world. And it was because of Twitter, right? And so social media cannot be undercounted as an important tool in this fight. So as we close, I really want to ask you what your advice is for people who want to get started. And we've talked about it a little bit, but so many people say there's so much to care about and I'm only one person. How can I actually affect any change? And also people can be often intimidated, right, and scared and feeling like if they step out on that thing or they speak their truth, whether it's on Twitter or online or in real life, that they will be judged for it, that they'll be persecuted for it, and that danger can come to them. So what do you tell folks that are scared or just not quite knowing how to get started in this thing called social change?
Absolutely. I mean, I think you have to start with the people that are right in front of you. One of the things that you mentioned about social media and like its ability to connect people across the ways is that it's about talking to individuals, right? It's a lot of times people think about social change as like a way to kind of broadcast the message. And really it's about how can I connect with the people that I know and let them know what it is that I care about, and how they can help me in like making change around this thing. And I'll also say too, if you're really in this for the long haul, I think a lot of things people get caught up with is burnout, right? And doing so much and pouring so much into this movement. And I think one thing that you always have to understand is that as much as you pour into any kind of movement, you have to pour back into yourself. And I don't mean that in like a self-care is taking baths and drinking tea kind of way, right? Like, it
can be, if that's your thing.
Right? I love baths. I love tea. But also, in addition to that, right, like really grapple with yourself as a person. If we want to transform communities, we have to be able to transform ourselves on an individual level. If we want to tear down oppressive structures, we have to be able to face the oppressor that exists within ourselves. And the main thing I will say is to focus on your human revolution as a person.
Wow. Yeah, that is powerful advice. Yeah, absolutely round of applause for that. Audre Lorde once said that caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare. What she was saying was that a whole lot of folks who look like you and look like us up here, we were not supposed to exist. So the fact that we're still here, and not only that we're fighting and that we're winning, but also that we're experiencing joy and love and happiness and family and community, all of that is resistance too. All of that is self-care too. And so thank you for reminding us to take care of ourselves and engage, I love that, in our human revolution as we engage in the worldly one. Clarice McCants from Color of Change, thank you so much for joining us and for the work that you all are doing.
Thank you so much.
There is another kind of violence, slower, but just as deadly destructive as the shot or the bomb in the night. This is the violence of institutions, indifference, inaction, and decay. This is the violence that afflicts the poor, that poisons relations between men because their skin has different colors. For when you teach a man to hate and to fear his brother, when you teach that he is a lesser man because of his color, then you also learn to confront others, not as fellow citizens, but as enemies, to be met not with cooperation, but with conquest, to be subjugated and to be mastered. this much is clear. Violence breeds violence. Repression breeds retaliation. And only a cleansing of our whole society can remove this sickness from our souls. We must admit the vanity of our false distinctions and learn to find our own advancement in search for the advancement of all.
So we've talked about connecting as a family and a community and standing up for one another. We've talked about the all-important human revolution. And now we're going to continue this critically important conversation. If you are online and engaged in this conversation, please use the hashtag RFK50, whether you're on Twitter or on Facebook. We want to know what you think. We want to hear from you, and we want you to engage in this conversation. I am so excited for this fourth and final conversation. Before we open up the chat to all of you, we are here with some incredibly brave freedom fighters. Please join me in welcoming Micaela Iron Shell Dominguez, Tomas Lopez Jr., Aaron Wise, Lauren Howland, Alex Howland, and Wajinguda. I got it better that time. I'm very clear about pronouncing people's names correctly. Eli Hornick. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's give them a round of applause. Names are important. They mean a lot. Names are important. All right, so you all are here. Thank you so much for joining us. And you all have been standing up against some really, really tough stuff for a very long time now. Since Standing Rock, we have seen a new way of thinking about the planet and about Native communities that, frankly, too many of us were late to catch up on, that have been marginalized in the pursuit of, in particular, natural resources. So how can we turn the lessons learned from Standing Rock into widespread policy change, not just for there, but for everywhere? Would love to hear from many of you.
Okay, one thing that I think we could learn from is from an indigenous perspective, we desegregate ourselves from the environment. We're a part of the environment. We're a part of nature, and we should protect what we have now, like leaning towards renewable energy and trying to conserve what we have now. Knowing that water is a carrier of life, and all life carries water, and taking care of ourselves. I really like what she said about taking care of ourselves, because that's how we're going to take care of the earth. The earth is alive, water is alive, and to work towards policy change, my tribe just included in our statutes the immutable rights of nature, the right for all living beings to breathe clean air, to have clean water, and any violators of those rights of nature can be persecuted in our courts of law. And even if it's a corporate entity, the chairman on the board of that corporation has to personally sit the time and personally pay. So that's one way that my tribe is working towards policy change.
That's such a powerful concept, making people personally liable for the harm being done to the earth and to our natural resources. And I always, your necklace says protector, and I always found it so powerful that all of the activists at Standing Rock talked not just about being protesters, but protectors, which was powerful to me as someone who's not indigenous to this country, because I recognized you all as standing up for all of us, right? Which was a powerful act sometimes in the face of folks who don't recognize your nations, who don't recognize your tribes, who don't recognize the humanity of indigenous people. So how do you stand up in the face of that hate? How do you choose courage and bravery anyway, and actually work to protect life in the ways that you have?
Hey everyone, my name is Alex Howland, and One thing for that is we called ourselves protectors because we stand for those who cannot, the trees, the four-legged, the wind, the water, the fire, the air. We all need these things to survive, and if no one else is going to protect these things, then we will. We will be the youth, and we will tell people that we are here and that we're going to continue to protect these things for our younger generations to come, that they have access to clean water, that they have access to the clean air and clean food. For not only the next 7 generations, but also after that, for the next couple of 100 years, we want our young people to have access to these things that we do, because right now that is being threatened. We don't know if they're gonna have these things for certain in the future, thanks to the fossil fuel industries of today.
And so what can each of us do, whether we are Indigenous or not, to stand up for exactly that? What are the policies that we can advocate for? What are the things that we can do in our own communities or even in our own homes to make sure that we're protecting our earth?
That's me. My name is Lauren Howland. I'm from Southwest in New Mexico, Dulce, New Mexico, from the Hickory Apache Nation, the Dene Nation, and San Carlos Apache Nation. One thing we can all incorporate into our lives is, simple as recycling. Getting, your bottles, putting it in a separate trash can. Getting your can, putting it in a separate trash can. You get paid for that, guys. Do you know that? What if all of us started recycling? How much, extra money we would have getting funded through our schools and through, people like us? What if, we all just started a recycling program between just our organizations and that funded our organizations? We could definitely do something like that, but also like the Ponca Nation just did, Eli was saying, incorporate this idea into laws and put it in writing. You guys think it's hippie-ish of us to be like, one with the earth, whatever.
No.
But the earth is sacred to us. It's, you guys go to churches and stuff. This whole earth is our church. The land you're walking on, those are our ancestors. Our ancestors' blood was spilled there, It's sacred, what you guys are calling just the earth, and it has life. She has life, and she gives us life. She gives you the air in your lungs right now. She gives me this breath to talk to you right now. So we need to protect her, at least do something to protect her in some sort of way, whether it's, declaring a body of water in your area a living being. You can declare that water a living being because it gives you life, because you cannot survive without that water. So incorporating just simple things like that into your lives, getting it in your heads that, okay, that rock over there, Native Americans call it grandpas because, they're our ancestry before. They were the first things here. Those rocks are sacred. And incorporating that little thought in your head, saying, okay, I'm going to walk this ground in a sacred way because it's sacred. And just doing these little things in your own mind and then sharing it with others. We share our songs, we share our ways with each other, and that's why we keep this whole thing of sacredness going. Our ancestors did it for us, and we're doing it now. So just incorporating the sacredness of a life. Your life is a blessing, guys, and you should work to keep that in a safe space and keep that sacred for the the rest of our lives, the people that are coming after us.
Absolutely. And that's not hippie-ish at all. Let's be very clear. You are talking about and teaching all of us a different way of being and living that we should be listening to and learning from. Bobby Kennedy actually said that young people and students are the last people to accept things the way they are. You all see the way that things are and have determined not to accept that and to actually try to create the future that we all want and deserve. So I'd love to hear from two of you that we haven't heard from yet about why it is so important, not just for us to follow the lead of young people, but for young people always to be at the forefront of movements if we expect them to make any change.
So when we first were called to Standing Rock, we were all told about this prophecy of the 7th generation, which was prophesied 7 generations ago. And we're currently living out this prophecy, which is that one day a black snake would come to the land and that it would infect the earth, the water, the fire, and the people themselves. And that it would be the 7th generation that would be the one to unite all of the people, bring back the medicine, and be the tip of the spear point to kill the black snake. And so living through that prophecy is really powerful because we understand that each one of these young people in this room plays a very intricate role in what we're doing. And what's really amazing is that everything that I hear from every single one of these young people are things that every single one of us deal with up here. Our people they experienced this gun violence of mass shootings. The earliest I know is Wounded Knee, when they murdered over 100 men, women, and children who were just simply eating and sleeping and living. And they left them there to freeze to death. And they didn't, their story is very rarely told. You know, I understand that our brothers and sisters to the south, that they call immigrants, are actually the original indigenous ancestors of this hemisphere.
Yeah.
The Mexica nation, the Inca nation, the Otomi people, they are the original people and inhabitants of this earth. And I also understand that our black brothers and sisters, you know, our struggles are almost synonymous. They're almost the same. The only thing that separates us is about 100 years difference. And so I see all of the things that we're all fighting for. We're all the same. We're all asking for the same things.
Yeah, and how do we, you know, you brought me actually to my last question. I'd love to hear from the two ladies that we haven't heard from yet. How do we ensure that this is a movement that we are all engaged in, right? We hear the word intersectionality all the time. How do we actually live it? How do we make sure that we all live this room and that your struggle is my struggle and my struggle is your struggle and we engage in this together?
I think one of the ways that we can do that is by having spaces such as where we're able to share each other's spaces and able to collaborate and talk about the struggles that each and one of us are having as they are all different in each of our communities. So such as for myself, you know, being a Chichangu Lakota woman, being a woman altogether and speaking to my women and reminding them that how connected we are to Mother Earth. And so, you know, that's really important to our people. And also, we're very connected to water as, you know, the first time you step into this world, that water is there. And that's really important. So, Mani Wachoni, water is life. We are life. Our bodies are, you know, majority water. And so by expressing those things and coming together and appreciating and taking responsibility for our next 7 generations.
Absolutely. Would you like to close this out?
Yeah, I think that, you know, you bring all these youth together, and it really doesn't matter who else is present because the other people aren't inheriting this earth. Everyone, I'll be long gone before any of these young people are here, you know, come into this world. And all the work that we're doing now is for those that cannot speak for themselves. And I think that, you know, folks just need to remember that you bring kids together, you bring youth together, and something better is going to come out of it because we're not hindered by the antiquated ideologies that this country was founded upon. We're all people that come from different nations. We recognize that some of us were brought here against our will. A genocide was committed to found the nation. Immigrants, you know, created this country. And most importantly, it's people from all different backgrounds that are willing to fight for each other because, as you all know, communities of color, we're all family. And it's time for the rest of the world to start realizing that they're a part of the larger puzzle.
Absolutely. A round of applause for that. I could not wrap it up any better myself. Thank you all so, so much for being here, for the courageous ways that you stand up for all of us every single day. Let's give them one more round of applause.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, they made a mistake getting all the organizations together because we about to inflict some change in this country.
Woo!
Ooh, girl.
No, it sounds like we did exactly the right thing then. Exactly the right thing. Thanks so much. And as we continue our town hall, here is a look into the global pursuit of freedom and justice.
Everywhere, new technology and communication brings men and nations closer together. The concerns of one inevitably become the concerns of all. And our new closeness is stripping away the false masks, the illusion of differences, which is the root of injustice and of hate and of war. This world demands the qualities of youth, not a time of life, but a state of mind, a temper of the will, a quality of the imagination, a predominance of courage over timidity, of the appetite for adventure over the life of ease. Those with the courage to enter the conflict will find themselves with companions in every corner of the world. would be a world which demanded of each government that it accept its responsibility to ensure social justice. It would be a world of constantly accelerating economic progress, not material welfare as an end in of itself, but as a means to liberate the capacity of every human being to pursue his talents and to pursue his hopes. It would, in short, be a world that we would all be proud to have built.
So now we've come to the all-important part of our conversation where we get to open it up and have this conversation all together. You all ready for that? Do I still have your energy? You still with me? Because I mean, look at this. This should make you excited. This is not just like a little United Colors of Benetton ad. There is so much power sitting up here, and I'm excited for all of us to learn and change the world together. So I'm gonna come over to this section. I know we've got a question. And so if you could stand and tell us your name, and we'd love to have this group of awesome leaders respond to your question.
Hi, my name is Minkute. I go to Thurgood Marshall. I'm a senior.
Hi.
My question is, how do you guys plan on giving a voice to DACA recipients while also protecting them?
Awesome. I'd love to hear from two folks who want to take that on. Now, don't everybody go first.
So being undocumented myself, someone who does benefit from DACA, and seeing the way that our voices have been able to help, especially those who are still in the shadows. I think it's important that we raise the voice for them. Especially our folks who live in very conservative areas, on how can we show them that they have a voice, but how can we use our voices that we do have to speak for them, and make sure that we help them to find that voice. So for us is to continue to scream as loud as we can through those Senate and House-sized buildings that we're undocumented and not afraid, and have our brothers and sisters and our allies join us in our chants, and show the power that we have together as one.
You know, I'd love to follow up that question, because especially when we talk about undocumented students, it can be very scary and nerve-wracking to be, I mean, we know how many people have been picked up and deported on their way to school, right? And so even sitting in that classroom is a very challenging prospect. But here we are at a school, we've got teachers and coaches and mentors in the audience. What do you all have to say to teachers and educators, people who are interacting with their young people every day? How do they stand up for and protect undocumented students?
So when I was in high school, I did not have those resources available, and I had to find my way around to be able to go to school, have access to education. And so my recommendation is to get as educated as you can and find those resources, right? Many times, undocumented immigrants like myself are first-generation students going to school here, and our parents do not know how to navigate the system, right? So we need all the help that we can get, and the schools, the administration, the faculty are our way to be able to get where we want to go.
Absolutely.
I would add just like one thing. I feel like, sometimes we don't realize when we work in schools, or whether you're an administration or teacher, the power that we have. And educators and folks that interact with communities and students in any institution, you have the power to make or break students' lives.
That's right.
And that, like for my experience, my counselor told me, you can't go to college because you're undocumented. Like, no, nothing else. Then she just called into the next student that was waiting online to see her. And if it wasn't because my mom pushed me to go and like figure out a way to get another teacher to help me out, I gave up at that moment. So there's just so much power in being there for the students, creating safe spaces, especially now when the fear of deportation is so high. teachers and educators and community members have a lot of power to create safe spaces and loving spaces.
Yeah, and you know, this is such an important point because I used to teach actually just a few minutes from here. And I learned very quickly that educators have the power to either speak life or speak harm into a young person's life. That at every second of every day, you are doing one or the other. And so you have to be intentional about making that choice. And so expanding that part of the conversation, even beyond undocumented or immigrant students, you all are all young people. Y'all have got educators and teachers. You all have teachers that you loved, and you have teachers that you were like, I can't wait to get out of this class. What do you have to say to those people who are standing up in front of you every day about how you want them to wield that power? Would love to hear from any of you.
Well, I think that the teachers that I love, as you said, and the teachers that I hate, I can't believe anybody would want to give teachers guns, personally.
Ding, ding, ding.
But yeah, you know, teachers have this incredible power, which is, you know, you're in loco parentis. There's no parents during the day when your kids are at school, and that's actually a lot of, like 40% of our school gets their lunches from school. That's their meal for the day is lunch at school. And teachers have such a profound role on a young person's life that if you slip up one day, you can really give a student a bad day, and it's incredibly troubling. But you can do something so simple as, like, you know, getting kids registered to vote or pre-registered, which we do in our history classes. And you can set that up with your school very, very simply. And you can give kids, if you can't do that at your school, you can give them that opportunity in other areas. And you can also open the floor. You can have Socratic seminars. Like in our AP Gov class, we had Socratic seminars like at least 3 times this year, where we talked about like 7 different topics in each seminar. And we had, you know, a no yelling rule. And if you, like, you know, it was encouraged to get intense. And you're allowed to say your truth and share personal stories. Like, of course I care about this topic. This happened to me, or it happened to somebody I know. So it should matter. And teachers are there to be those moderators and to help those kids find their voices.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think that the benefit a positive teacher could have on a student's life is, it's unimaginable. So often there are teachers who students will remember for the rest of their lives. I don't know about everybody in this room, but there's a chance everybody has that one teacher at least who they can say truly impacted them forever. And you notice a common thread between all those teachers. Those are the teachers who speak to you as people, not as kids. They don't patronize. Yeah. While you are their students, they're also open to learning from you. One of the teachers we lost at our school, Scott Beagle, he was always the teacher who every kid could go to and speak to him as a person. They can be mentored by him, not only in English or geography, 2 subjects he taught, but in life. And so often there are teachers who will stand there with the kids and encourage them to be their best selves and go be above and beyond to really be there for the students. And a lot of teachers in a lot of different states are truly disrespected by their states. In Florida, teachers are underpaid and treated terribly by our politicians. And there are teachers who will let that bring them down. I've had teachers who have been rude and awful to the kids, who have really not treated them very well. I've had teachers who have treated their students poorly because of their race or gender. Or there are teachers out there who are amazing in the lives of young people, and there are teachers out there who have really been bogged down by the system. And I think if we create a very respectful and understanding dialogue with teachers, I think if politicians treat them better, if we all treat them better, and they will be encouraged to love their job and to love teaching and love getting students becoming the best people they can be.
I love it. Shout out to the educators, the librarians, the coaches, the gym teachers, the after-school counselors. Yes.
So I'm only going to speak from an Indigenous point of view. School is always very, very hard for me. And I never really understood why I really had a hard time being forced to sit there and told what to do until I got older and I went to college and I started to understand what intergenerational trauma was. Wow. And so what I can really say and what I really want to tell teachers out there is that be careful with your students of color, because school is very traumatizing for us, especially for, Indigenous kids. We were shoved into boarding schools for, since the beginning of the 1900s and as far as, the early 90s. And the amount of trauma that we experienced in these boarding schools, I mean, these people were beating us, they were killing us. And most of, like, to give you facts or to give you statistics right now would be completely, they're not true, because so many kids died and they didn't even know. They just discarded them like we do our no pun intended, but our plastic bottles, you know? And if you go to these tribes, you'll hear from these older generations about what they went through. And sometimes you won't hear about it because they're so traumatized that they're afraid to speak about it. So I really urge educators, especially this coming generation of educators, to look into the trauma that Black and brown students have gone through because of the American education system.
Indeed.
And LGBT plus students.
Indeed.
Two-spirit.
One last thing on the topic of teachers and kind of everybody being treated equally. I think one important thing that a lot of people oftentimes forget about is students with basic learning disabilities. Like, I have dyslexia, and throughout time I was told, like, one of my teachers in elementary school said that your son will never be able to read or succeed, and he is destined to fail. And my favorite thing to say is, look at me now.
There it is.
But as an educator, understand that sometimes there are going to be students that take longer to learn. There's always going to be that one kid that's slower, but they may be the most creative kid in your class, and they may grow up to be something amazing if you give them that chance. So please make sure that you're giving, regardless of sexual orientation, race, or learning ability, give everybody that chance, and always keep an open mind.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. I know that we've got a question over here as well. Yes. If we can, here, you can have my mic, honey.
Okay, hey everyone. My name is Romani Wilson, and I'm from Banneker. This is for anyone. I just wondered how we should put more emphasis on mental health within the African American community, or even as communities of color, as many of us are losing our friends every day to things like gun violence or sexual harassment. You know, I feel like mental health isn't really taken serious within our communities. We're told, oh, what do you have to be sad for? So I'm just asking, what do you guys think we should do about that situation?
I can help you. I guess expand on that. And first off, I'd like to say rest in peace to Kate Spade, because oftentimes we don't address mental illness within our community. Because the sad reality of it is that the Black community just doesn't like to address mental illness. We think it's taboo, and a lot of the time it leaves people to suffer. And the worst thing about suffering, while all types of suffering is bad, but suffering in silence sucks, because you feel like you don't have that outlet to express yourself or to really, confide in somebody. So I would say the best thing to do is to start to break down the stigma around mental illness, because sometimes people really do need someone to talk to. Because I think open dialogue is the first step into healing, into, like she was talking about, your human revolution. Because oftentimes, like we said, we often have more in common, than we may like to recognize. Because mental health is it's a spectrum. Because some days you're feeling really well, and some days, are just better than others, and that's life. Oftentimes, some days are going to be just better, some days will be monotonous, some days will be exciting. But with mental health, I would just like to say it's just understanding that it is a spectrum, and understanding that it is a part of life, and opening that dialogue.
Yes.
Where'd she go? Okay.
Back here.
So I'm just going to go with it. When I was 11 years old, I tried to commit suicide, because a lot of really terrible things were happening to me, not personally, but right in my community. And I didn't understand, and I was really pissed off. And I was just like, none of you get it. None of you understand what it's like to be in my body, in my brown body, going to school every single day and dealing with the things that I deal with, and then coming home and dealing with home, and then going out into my community and dealing with my community, and you just don't get it. And I was a smart kid, and I looked up how to do it, and I tried, right? Because I was sad. One of the things that I've learned since, and that, we as brown and Black folks, I think, have always known, but Western science has magically just proven, is that DNA, right, our DNA, the coding around our DNA actually inherits the traumas that our parents have carried. And so if you think about it, it's not just what my mom carried, right? It's what her mom carried from the boarding schools. And it's just not what she carried in the boarding schools, it's what her mom carried from forced removal, right? And it's not just that. So if you think about your own community, where you come from, like I don't want to guess, but I'm assuming you're Black, you know, you were dragged here. And whether or not it was you physically that was brought here to build a community, to build a country for people that didn't care about you, you're going to remember it no matter what generation you are, because you're carrying that in your blood. When I was a little girl, I didn't understand that all those things I was feeling was everything that everybody before me had felt already. Now that you know, now that you're aware of it, you think about how it is going forward, that you're going to undo that. You want to break the chain, you break the chain by knowing. You break the chain with your knowledge, you start there, and you go and share that message with other people and help them break that link in their chain too. Because if collectively we're all breaking those links, right, where are the chains?
Wow. Thank you for sharing your story. I've been there, and I understand how hard it can be to share it, but you just freed somebody else by sharing your story. And so I want to thank you for that. I want to thank you for that. We've got another question down front.
Hi, my name is Rakaya Strickland, and I'm from Eastern Senior High School with my organization, One Step Forward. My question is, how will you address gun violence in urban areas like the alarming amount of gun violence in places like DC, Chicago, and Baltimore?
Well, I want to hop on that because we had really, really good conversations with the Peace Warriors and Brave in Chicago and in a church basement, which is it was such a good time. We had discussions about how in the African American community in Chicago they faced any type of gun violence, but the Hispanic community did face gun violence with AR-15s, and that was the first time that conversation had ever happened. So it's not just about it's about addressing all those things, like the communities themselves talking to each other and saying, okay, what do we need to focus on? What do we need to talk about to our legislatures? And the reason why Chicago has such strict gun laws but so much gun violence is because the neighboring states have such poor gun laws, and you can just drive 7 miles, pick up some guns, sell them on the street back in Chicago at the end of the day. And that's what happens a lot. So it's not just focusing on the communities. It is focusing on the local communities, but it's also focusing on the federal government, because the federal government is only as strong as its weakest state law. And that's a really, really important thing to remember.
Powerful. I think there were more comments. One up here.
Right here.
Down front. Yes.
Yeah, so I think one way of just addressing that gun violence is a huge issue around the whole country, especially in our communities, is just by having more people just tell their truth. So like me, I tell my truth. My brother was about 300 feet away from my home, when he was shot and killed. And that moves a lot of people. Just having more people share their experiences and just giving a lot of people their platform, because if you don't know that it's happening, then people can't create change. So if you really tell your story and let people know that this is happening in my community, then more likely change will happen. So.
I think another really important thing we can do to address gun violence in communities of marginalized people in this country is hold the people telling those stories, the media, accountable. So often, gun violence in communities of color will be called gang violence just because it's in communities of color. When, forgive me for being specific, but Zion's brother Zaire was at a college readiness program. That's not gang violence. That is gun violence in this country, David.
One of the other things that I've been working extensively on, because even before all this, I had to debate things like school resource officers in school, and one of the main arguments against that is increased discrimination amongst especially students of color. For example, students of color get suspended at a rate 3 times higher than white kids like me do, and why the hell do we accept that, first off? And second off, when politicians, one of the popular things, especially among white voters, is being tough on crime and taking things down. But unsurprisingly, as many of you know, and I've come to realize, especially through doing all the research that I've done, especially since what happened at my school, is some of the best programs at preventing gun violence are behavioral intervention programs, where they work with a coalition of people, hiring people from these communities to work in these communities, where they sit down with the 2 to 5% of people that perpetrate the most gun violence, and they say, here, we are here to help you. We don't want you to do these acts. But if they do continue and they don't stop, they are referred to law enforcement, or if they do need mental health care, they're referred there. And that's the main thing that I've been working on. Programs like this that I'm talking about, like Cure Violence and Ceasefire, have been implemented in over 100 communities across the country. And on average, they've been shown, even without any form of gun control, to reduce the rate of violent crime by 40 to 70% for only a couple $1 million a year in these cities, saving them billions of dollars at the state level and all over the country. And that's just one of the many ways that we're trying to work intersectionally with as many communities as possible, because this is an American issue and we're all Americans.
Absolutely, yes.
So to add on to what David and Cameron and everybody else has said, it's no secret that our school was covered differently than many other places. And my way of thinking about it is why I think the media kind of did a disgusting job with this, is because this was one day in our lives. But for many other marginalized communities, this is everyday life. And I think it is now our responsibility not only to hear their stories and listen to them, but to pass the mic to them and have their stories told.
Awesome. I love that last point, right? Because we've all heard that saying, be a voice for the voiceless, right? Have you all heard that? And what I learned on the streets of Ferguson is everybody's got a voice, right? A physical voice, a mental voice. They're writing it down, they're painting it, they're doing whatever. We don't have to be a voice for the voiceless. We just have to pass the mic. That's a really, really important point. Thank you for that. So I have a question for all of you, and we have time probably for about 2 more questions. So if anyone has a question, I know that there's a question over here, so I'm gonna come over here in a second. But before I go over there, I have a question. By a show of hands, how many of you all are thinking about running for office one day? Okay, 1, 2, 3. I see a half hand, a maybe hand, a possibly hand.
2 behind you in the audience.
2 behind me in the audience, yep, over here, 1 over here. This is what I'm talking about. So when we talk about registering to vote, you see all these folks? When we talk about registering folks, driving people to the polls, donating, volunteering on campaigns, here are some future campaigns for you to volunteer on right now. And I appreciate you all recognizing that there is an opportunity for all of us to stand up in many different ways on the streets and at the policy table. So that makes me really excited. I'll go to this question over here.
Hi, I'm Janaya. I attend TMA and I'm a freshman. Growing up, many of us were taught when you take part in a wrongdoing, you should apologize and work on solutions. Do you feel the United States has identified and owned up the historic and systemic actions of racism that has laid the foundation for much of the socioeconomic battles we face today?
Wow.
No.
That's a word and a question and a thesis and a whole lot of things. Yes.
I believe number 47 recently said that 45. I'm in the future, y'all.
Yeah, me too. I'm just trying to skip ahead. I get it.
I believe this person recently said that they tamed a nation and that they will not apologize for it. So I'm pretty sure that's a pretty forward answer in terms of have they apologized. And I would say that if you look at our communities, you could say that they're very unapologetic about it. And they make sure that they remind us every single day of what they've done to us. And
sorry, I didn't mean to.
I will say that if you truly want to see the wrath and the unforgiving nature of this country, go to the Dakotas. Go to Lower Brule. Go to Rosebud, South Dakota. Go to the Ogallala Nation. You'll see how unforgiving this nation really is, because the Lakota people, the Dakota people, the Nakota people were the only nation to defeat the U.S. government at the Battle of Little Bighorn, or what we also call Custer's Last Stand. And so this nation is built on relentless unforgiveness. So.
Yes.
Yeah, so just to add to that, when the community of brown and black folks, especially the undocumented community, are being called animals, and there is no apology. When families are being separated from their children at the borders, and children are being put in detention camps where we don't know if they're fine, we don't know if they're eating, we don't know if they're safe, their parents don't know where they're at. and there is no apology, there is no reasoning, no one is giving answers. So you could just tell by our community and the way we unite and the way we fight back and the way we do things of why should we apologize?
Yeah. What? Yes.
I just wanted to also jump on that and say that after the shooting at our school, they released a special AR-15 that said "In loving memory of Parkland."
Oh Lord. Well, that's not an apology. Your question brings up a really important point, right? Because not only has there not been apology, what you thoughtfully did was connect the past to exactly where we are now, right? We are facing the issues that we are facing now because of all of the things that have happened since before the founding of this country, right? And I say founding in quotes, because obviously there were people here. My question to you all is like, what is it going to take for us to actually fully reckon with that history, right? Not only to get apology, but apology in the form of better policy, stronger neighborhoods, better schools, full funding, full access to healthcare, reproductive rights, LGBTQ rights. The kind of apology I want is better policy for my people, right? The kind of apology I want is freedom, right? So what is it going to take to get there? How do we get there?
All right, I'm going to answer that for you. You put us in charge. You put us in those offices.
I'm good with that.
You get us in there. You get all of you guys right now. One of the primaries is happening right now in New Mexico. There are a lot of indigenous women running for office this year. There's over 56 in this whole nation that are running for office. There's grassroots folks running for office. You get to the polls and you put them in charge. That's how you apologize, and that's how systemic change will come. You put the oppressed in the oppressor's position, but we're not going to oppress you back. No, we're going to move forward. We're going to progress. We're not trying to get revenge on any of y'all. We just want to live a better life and not have to fight for our lives.
Yes. A word and a half. Michaela? Yeah.
I think that I just want to add on to that. That was great, sister. Also, being proud and standing up, such as myself today, dressing the way that I am and feeling comfortable being dressed like this. I wear this today in honor of our sister, Claudia Gomez Gonzalez, who was shot at the border, just trying to get a better life for herself and her family. And I think that we need to remember and recognize that and bring awareness to that. Also, from my indigenous perspective, remembering that I exist and not forgetting that and standing up for our ancestors. So again, I exist. We exist. Please do not forget our people.
Indeed. And I know we have to wrap it up, and there could not be a better place to wrap it up. You exist, and because you exist, I exist. And so I'm thankful to each of you all for the work that you're doing every day in your communities to truly make America great again, and to make sure that we actually have the kind of future that includes all of us and not just some of us. The legacy of the people who have gone before us is only honored, like I said at the very beginning, when we take it up ourselves and do something with it. So thank you for standing up and doing something with it. You are an inspiration to every single one of us. One more round of applause for all of our incredible activists, and for each of you who joined us and who are standing up in your own ways, for each of you at home who tuned in and who are going to make action happen in your own communities. Thank you so much. Remember to keep the conversation going with the hashtag RFK50. I'm Brittany Packnett, and I'm wishing power and love for each of you.
I have faith in humanity, rising from sorrow will lead. I have faith in the path that will tread. It's been told, it's been sung, it's been said. It's been years, still gotta fight. I said, Father, won't you lead them to the light? Why do they say that the battle's over? They just trying to wrap the wounds in clover. Martin Luther King died 50 years ago. Then why is Jim Crow still starring the show? Oh Lord, a signature on a page won't be freedom from this vicious cage. Oh, speak of parks on a bus, sing of the uniforms you couldn't trust. Even out of all of this plight, preach the story of the time that we made it right. Or cried the proclamation on a stage, fear having clipped her wings, stuck in a cage, begging it to pray, laden with rage. Starting today, I know we'll make a change. Oh, speak, oh, sing, oh, preach, oh, cry, oh, fear, oh, scream. Oh, speak, oh, sing, oh, preach, oh, cry, oh, fear, oh, scream. Only thoughts and prayers and all the naysayers. The journey's been cold and hard, but we're in the prime. But it's been a trouble climb. Come on, baby, won't you sing it with me one more time? Oh, speak of signs and protests. Sing for all the sisters doing their best. Even out of all of this plight, preach the story of the time that we made it right. Oh, cry the proclamation to the crowd. Shout to the spirits who've been broken and bowed. Oh, I bet, 'cause times are certain strange. Starting today, I know we'll make a change. Oh, speak, oh, sing, oh, preach, oh, cry, oh, fear, oh, scream. Oh, speak, oh, sing, oh, preach, oh, cry, oh, fear, oh, scream. Oh, speak of parks on a bus, sing of the uniforms you couldn't trust. Even out of all of this plight, preach the story of the time that we made it right. Oh, cry the proclamation on the stage, fear having clipped her wings, stuck in a cage. Oh, I beg, say with rage. Starting today, I know I'll make a change. Oh, speak, oh, sing, oh, preach, oh, cry, oh, fear, oh, scream. Oh, speak, oh, sing, oh, preach, oh, cry, oh, fear, oh, scream.